I look at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and don't recognize the woman staring back at me. When did those deep wrinkles around my eyes appear? When did my once chestnut hair turn completely gray? 68 years old, a number that always seemed so distant when I was teaching students Shakespeare's sonnets and Jane Austen's novels. My name is Beatrice Pellegrini, and I have devoted 37 years of my life to teaching English literature at Shoreline College, a small coastal town where the quay smell of salt mixes with the aroma of coffee from countless cafes and the ringing of bicycle bells as students rush to class. Now that I have been retired for 5 years, these sounds are just memories. I finish my morning routine and go downstairs to the first floor of my small but cozy home. Here, every object tells a story. The books my husband Edward and I collected throughout our lives. The poster from our first date at the theater. Photos of our son Fletcher at different stages of his life. Edward died of a heart attack when Fletcher was 14. I remember that day as if it were yesterday. The call from the Afiyar hospital, the numbness, the confusion in my son's eyes when I tried to explain to him that his father would never come back. After the funeral, I vowed to myself that I would do everything I could to give Fletcher the best education and all the opportunities in life that Edward and I had planned for him. I worked overtime, took extra courses and research projects, and scrimped and saved to pay for a prestigious school and then a university. Fletcher was a smart kid. He got his dad's analytical mind and my attention to detail, business school, a master's in finance, a job at a big investment firm. I was proud of every one of his accomplishments. And then Olivia came along. A phone call interrupts my thoughts. I flinch as I look at the screen. Speak of the devil, or rather the devil's bride. Good morning, Beatrice. Her voice is honeyed, but I've long since learned to recognize the artificial notes. How are you feeling today? Fine. Thank you, Olivia. I reply neutrally. I'm glad to hear it. Fletcher asked me to find out if you received all the documents from your cousin's attorney. We're just worried that you might be cheated out of the inheritance. You know how many scammers there are these days, especially when it comes to elderly people. Here we go. It's only been 3 days since my cousin's funeral, and they're already interested in her inheritance. Imaginin was a well-known artist in certain circles. We weren't particularly close when she was alive. She preferred Paris and New York to our quiet shore. But we appreciated each other, and to everyone's surprise, including mine, she left me not only a significant collection of her work, but also a very substantial amount of money. It's all right, Olivia. Mr. Harrington is very competent, I reply, trying to hide my irritation. I already have the documents, and all the funds have been transferred to my account. A moment's pause. I can almost see her pursing her lips as she considers her next move. Wonderful. Fletcher will be so happy. By the way, he wanted to talk to you about possibly investing the money. He has several very promising projects, and your money could generate an excellent return instead of just sitting in an account. My money, not an inheritance, not funds, but my money, as if its only value is in its ability to work for my son. Thank you for your concern, but I already have plans for this. Money, I say firmly. Really? A steely tone creeps into her voice. And what are they, if you don't mind me asking? I take a deep breath. I've been rehearsing this conversation in my head for days. I plan to buy and renovate a Victorian house on Makova Street and turn it into a small cultural center, an exhibition space for Imaginin's work, literary evenings, maybe small educational programs for local children. The silence on the other end of the line is so eloquent that I can almost hear Olivia's plans crumbling. Beatrice, she finally says, with feigned concern. Are you sure this is wise at your age, taking on such a project? Restoration and organization are a huge undertaking. And then what will happen to the house? When will you understand? Wouldn't it be better to leave your legacy to your family? By family, she means not me, not my grandchildren, but herself and Fletcher. 17 years of marriage, and I am still nothing more than a source of potential resources to her. I feel great. Olivia, and I plan to live long enough to see this project come to fruition. As for the future, everything will be clearly spelled out in my will. I hear her take a sharp breath. Of course, she says quickly, changing tactics. We're just worried about you. By the way, we'd like to invite you to dinner on Friday at a new restaurant on the waterfront. We need to have a serious talk about the future. The whole family. That means an evening of snide comments from Olivia, Fletcher's silent agreement with everything his wife says, and condescending glances from my grandchildren. Eleanor and Theodore are wonderful children by nature, but the influence of their parents, especially their mother, has made them cold and distant towards me. Okay, I agree, already knowing I'll regret it. What time? 6:30. The restaurant is called Lot d'Or. We've booked a table for 6. For 6? I ask in surprise. Yes, my colleague from the law firm and his wife will be there too. They're very keen to meet you. Great, witnesses for whatever she's planning. Olivia never does anything just for the sake of it. See you later, Olivia, I say, ending the conversation. Hanging up the phone, I feel a familiar tension in my temples. Every conversation with my sister-in-law leaves me feeling this way. I look at the clock. It's almost 11. I have an appointment with a real estate agent at noon to look at that Victorian house. As I leave the house, I notice the neighbor boy tinkering with his bike. I remember Fletcher at that age, just as focused when he was fixing something. What has changed? When did my kind, curious boy turn into a man who lets his wife manipulate him and humiliate his own mother? The house on Makova Street is impressive, even in its current state of disrepair. It's a 3-story Victorian mansion with a turret, a veranda, and stained glass windows. The agent, Mr. Dawson, is clearly nervous as he shows me the dilapidated rooms. Mrs. Pellegrini, I have to admit, this place needs major repairs. The roof is leaking. There are problems with the wiring, not to mention the plumbing. I see potential, not problems, Mr. Dawson. I interrupt him. High ceilings, beautifully proportioned rooms, original wood paneling. This house has soul, but the cost of restoration could exceed the value of the house itself, he cautions. I realize that money isn't the main factor in this case. This house is perfect for the cultural center I plan to create. Mr. Dawson looks puzzled. It's probably not often that a 68-year-old widow buys a dilapidated mansion to pursue ambitious projects. If you're sure, I think we can start drawing up the contract next week. On my way home, I feel an unusual surge of energy. For the first time in a long time, I have a project of my own that has nothing to do with teaching or family responsibilities, something that will be entirely mine. The phone rings again, interrupting my thoughts. This time, it's Fletcher. Mom. His voice sounds tense. Olivia said you're going to buy some old house. Hi, Fletcher. Yes, that's right. I just looked at it. But why? That project seems too ambitious and expensive. It's my money, Fletcher, I say calmly. And my life, Mom. His tone becomes condescending. No one is saying it's not your money, but you have to think about the future. About your grandchildren. Oh, I'm thinking about the future, I reply. About the legacy I want to leave behind. The cultural center will serve the community for many years to come. Olivia says it's just a whim that you're trying to prove that you still have some control. There it is. Not his words, but he's saying them. As usual, expressing his wife's thoughts. Tell Olivia I'd be happy to discuss this over dinner on Friday, I say, trying to remain calm. Now, excuse me, I have to go. I have a meeting with the interior designer. It's a lie, but I need to end this conversation. Okay. He reluctantly agrees. See you Friday. That evening, I sit on the porch looking through old photo albums. Here's Fletcher at 5 years old on the beach building a sandcastle. Here he is at 12 receiving an award at a science fair. Here's his college graduation. I'm standing next to him so proud. And here are the wedding photos. Olivia, in an elegant dress, radiant and confident. Even then you could see in her eyes that cold calculation, that I chose to ignore. My thoughts are interrupted by the doorbell. To my surprise, my grandchildren are standing at the door, 16-year-old Theodore and 12-year-old Eleanor, Grandma. Theodore nods reservedly. He is tall for his age, with Edward's serious eyes. Mom asked me to give you an invitation to dinner. She forgot to mention that it's a restaurant with a dress code. Ah, there it is. A subtle hint that my usual clothes might not be presentable enough for their circle. Thanks, Theo. I smile. Would you like to come in for a minute? Eleanor exchanges glances with her brother. She has Olivia's dark hair, but my green eyes. We don't have much time, she says, in a tone that is undoubtedly copied from her mother. Our driver is waiting. Of course, I nod, trying to hide my disappointment. See you Friday. By the way, Theodore adds, already halfway to the car, Mom said, you got some kind of inheritance, and now you want to spend it on an old house. Is that true? Yes. I'm planning to create a cultural center, I reply, watching their reaction. Sounds boring, Eleanor shrugs. What will be there? Theodore asks unexpectedly. An exhibition space for my cousin's paintings, literary evenings, educational. Programs, maybe a small cinema for showing classics and art house films. Something resembling interest flashes across Theodore's face, but he quickly hides it. That's probably going to cost a fortune, he remarks. Maybe I agree. But I have savings, and Imagigan's inheritance is quite substantial. Mom says it's not wise to start projects like that at your age, Eleanor says again, copying Olivia's intonation. What do you think, Ellie? I ask gently. She looks puzzled, as if she has rarely been asked for her opinion. I don't know, she finally says. I guess it's your business. It's a small victory, but still. We have to go, Theodore says, glancing at his watch. Mom will be upset if we're late for tennis. I watch them get into a black SUV with tinted windows. My grandchildren are so close in blood and yet so distant emotionally. What do they know about me other than what they hear from their parents? Do they know that I used to write poetry? That I love jazz from the 1940s? That I can bake the world's best blueberry pie from my grandmother's recipe? On Friday, I put on the dark blue dress I bought for the last literary symposium where I gave a presentation. It's simple, elegant, and without frills. Exactly what's required by the dress code at the restaurant Theodore mentioned. On the way there, I think about the conversation ahead. Whatever Olivia has planned, I have to stay calm and firm. This money is mine, and only I will decide how to use it. The Azure Coast is exactly as I expected, pretentious with a claim to European chic. The maitre d' shows me to a table where Fletcher, Olivia, the children, and another couple, obviously Olivia's colleagues, are already seated. Here's our Beatrice, Olivia exclaims, rising to greet me. We're so glad you could join us. Meet Gregory and Veronica Shepard. Gregory is a partner in our law firm specializing in property law. Property law, of course. I exchange handshakes with the Shepards, noting Veronica's appraising glance. Very nice to meet you, I say, taking my place next to Eleanor. Beatrice taught English literature at Shoreline College, Olivia explains, her voice clearly tinged with condescension. She's retired now, but she's still very active. Can you imagine she's going to restore an old Victorian house and turn it into some kind of cultural center? Sounds ambitious, Gregory remarks with a professional smile. Who's handling the legal side of the project? Property registration, taxes, insurance, those are pretty complicated matters. I have an attorney, Mr. Harrington, I reply. He's been handling my affairs for many years. Harrington? Gregory frowns. I'm not sure I know him. Is he from a large firm? He's an independent lawyer, I say, and very competent. Mom, Fletcher interjects. Perhaps you should consider a more modern approach. Gregory could recommend someone from his firm. Here we go. I see them exchanging glances with Olivia. Everything is going according to plan. Thank you, but I'm very happy with Mr. Harrington, I reply firmly. The waiter brings the menu, and the conversation turns to choosing dishes. I notice Olivia whispering something in Fletcher's ear, and he nods. Grandma, Eleanor says to me unexpectedly, is it true that your cousin was a famous artist? Yes. Dear, I smile, surprised by her interest. Imagining exhibited in galleries in New York, Paris, and London. She had a very distinctive style, a mixture of abstraction and symbolism. And she left you all her paintings, Eleanor continues. Most of the collection, yes. That's why I want to start a gallery so that people can see her work. Sounds like a waste of money, Olivia interjects. Those paintings could be sold. I read that your cousin's work is very valuable on the art market right now. That's exactly why I'm not going to sell them, I retort. Their value will only increase over time. But you're not thinking about the future, says Fletcher, about leaving something behind for the children. I'm thinking about cultural heritage, I reply calmly, and about creating something meaningful, in memory of Imagigan. Olivia leans toward her husband and whispers something in his ear again. He listens intently, and I see his expression change from doubt to determination. Mom, he says, straightening up, we're here to have a serious talk about the future, your future. I think you should consider moving to the Golden Harbor Retirement Home. It's a very prestigious place with medical care and entertainment programs. Olivia and I have already spoken to the administration, and they are ready to accept you. I look at him, not believing my ears. A nursing home? Me? Fletcher, I am completely independent and of sound mind. Why do I need a nursing home? It's for your own good, Olivia interjects. We're worried about you. You live alone without supervision. And the project with this house, it's too complicated for someone your age. My age doesn't prevent me from being active and independent, I say, feeling anger rising inside me. And I don't need supervision. But the inheritance, Fletcher begins. Here we are getting to the heart of the matter, I interrupt. You're not concerned about my well-being. You're concerned about Imogen's money. Olivia shoots me a cold look. Beatrice, you're being unfair. We do care about you. We just want to make sure the inheritance is used wisely. Wisely according to your standards, I clarify. In other words, hand it over to you. Fletcher looks embarrassed, but Olivia remains icy. You can't deny that we're your family, and it's only natural that we think about the future of the children. I think about the future of my grandchildren too, I say, looking at Theodore and Eleanor, who are watching the scene with obvious discomfort. That's exactly why I want to create something meaningful that will live on after me. A cultural center that will serve the community and bear our family name. Olivia leans toward Fletcher again and whispers something in his ear. I see his face flush and his eyes narrow. Whatever she said, it clearly hit a nerve. Beatrice, Gregory interjects, clearly sensing the tension. Perhaps there is a compromise. Part of the funds for your project, part for a trust fund for the grandchildren. I could help with the paperwork, but I'm not listening to him. My attention is riveted on Fletcher, who is looking at me with an expression I've never seen on his face before, a mixture of anger and determination. I don't know what Olivia whispered to him, but it was something that turned something inside my son. We'll continue this conversation after dinner, Olivia says, noticing the waiter approaching with a tray. For now, let's enjoy our meal. And although she appears calm on the surface, I notice a triumphant gleam in her eyes. She's up to something. And judging by the look on Fletcher's face, it's not good. I look at the artfully arranged appetizers just brought by the waiter. Thin slices of salmon on crispy toast, scallops with some exotic sauce, vegetable tines. Everything looks like a work of art, too beautiful to be eaten. In a different situation, I would have appreciated the culinary skill, but now I can't swallow a bite. Cadet Shepard casually discusses his recent trip to Europe. Olivia listens attentively, occasionally interjecting clever comments. Fletcher silently studies the wine list, glancing at me from time to time. The grandchildren are engrossed in their phones. Beatrice, Olivia suddenly addresses me, interrupting Veronica's story about Parisian galleries. We haven't congratulated you properly on your inheritance. It's really wonderful that Imogen appreciated your family connection. Her words carry a subtle hint that I don't deserve this inheritance, that there was only a formal connection between me and my cousin. Imogen and I appreciated each other, I reply calmly, although our paths in life were different. Of course, Olivia nods. She lived such a bohemian life, travel, exhibitions, numerous romances, and you devoted yourself to your academic career and raising your son. Such different approaches to life. I hear a veiled comparison that doesn't favor me. In her interpretation, Imogen's life seems bright and full, while mine seems boring and limited. Everyone chooses their own path, I say, and finds value in it. Of course, Olivia quickly agrees. And now, thanks to Imogen's generosity, you have the opportunity to change course, go on a trip, for example, or move to a more comfortable home, or invest the money to ensure a stable income, Fletcher adds, joining the conversation. I could help you choose a portfolio. I've already decided what to do with the inheritance, I remind them. A cultural center is a project I've been thinking about for a long time. A long time? Olivia raises her perfectly plucked eyebrow. But Imogen died just a week ago. The idea of creating a cultural space came to me a long time ago, I explain. The inheritance made it possible. I understand, Olivia nods with feigned sympathy. The desire to leave some kind of mark. At your age, it's natural. Again, the emphasis on my age, as if 68 is old age, almost a death sentence. It's not just about the legacy, I say. Shoreline needs a space like this. There's no good gallery here, no place for literary gatherings. Young people have nowhere to go except shopping malls and movie theaters. I doubt that young people today are interested in literary evenings, Fletcher remarks with a slight smile. You were interested, I remind him. You loved poetry in high school. I see Olivia glance quickly at her husband, and he blushes slightly. That was a long time ago, he dismisses. Different times, different interests. Literature never goes out of style, I say. Human passions, aspirations, and conflicts remain unchanged throughout the centuries. Sounds like a lecture, Olivia smiles, but her eyes remain cold. But let's get back to practical matters. Restoring a Victorian mansion is a huge expense. Are you sure you have enough funds? I've done all the calculations, I reply. The inheritance is quite substantial. And yet, she insists, perhaps it's worth considering alternatives. For example, renting a more modern space or collaborating with existing organizations. The Victorian house on Makova is perfect for my concept, I say firmly. High ceilings, beautiful architecture, history imprinted in every detail. Sentimentality, Olivia sighs, as if it were a diagnosis. But a business plan requires rationality. Have you drawn up a financial model, calculated the return on investment? A cultural center is not intended to be a commercial enterprise, I explain. It's a contribution to the city's community life. So you plan to spend your entire inheritance without any return? Olivia looks almost shocked. That's not the wisest decision. There will be a return, I object, just not in monetary terms. Cultural enrichment, educational opportunities for young people. Sounds great in theory, Fletcher interjects, but in practice, projects like that often require ongoing investment. The building needs maintenance, the staff needs to be paid. In a few years, you may find that all the funds have been exhausted. I have a plan to attract grants and sponsorship, I say. I'm not as naive as you think. No one thinks you're naive, Beatrice, Olivia says quickly. We're just concerned. A project like this is a huge responsibility and burden at any age, and at yours. At my perfectly healthy age of 68, I finish for her. I am in perfect health with a clear mind and enough energy for any project I choose. For a moment, an awkward silence reigns at the table. Theodore and Elelenar look up from their phones, clearly intrigued by the raised tone of the conversation. Of course, Beatrice, Veronica says conciliatorily. No one doubts your energy. You look wonderful for your age. For your age is another condescending phrase I'm starting to hate. Thank you, I reply dryly. The waiter brings the main courses, and for a while, the conversation turns to the chef's culinary skills. I notice Olivia whispering something in Fletcher's ear, and he nods, giving me a strange look. Mom, he says when the waiter leaves, Olivia and I wanted to discuss another option with you, perhaps one that's more optimal for everyone. I'm listening, I say, though internally I'm bracing myself for another attempt at manipulation. What if part of the inheritance goes to your project, he suggests, and part is invested in the children's future, say 50-50? That's not a compromise, Fletcher. I shake my head. That's an attempt to gain control over the money Imagigan left me. My cousin wanted me to do with it as I saw fit, and I intend to respect her wishes. But you're not thinking about the future, he insists, his voice becoming tense. What will happen to the children if... If what? I interrupt. If I die? I've already provided for their education. The rest is your responsibility as parents. That's selfish, Olivia interjects, her tone hardening. Spending a fortune on a project that's likely to fail instead of securing your grandchildren's future. Selfish. I feel my voice rising and make an effort to speak more quietly. It's selfish to demand money that doesn't belong to you. It's selfish to expect me to give up my plans for yours. It's selfish to talk about my death as if it's imminent just because you can't wait to get your inheritance. Olivia's face hardens, but she quickly regains control and smiles, though the smile doesn't reach her eyes. Beatrice, you've got this all wrong. We just care about you. No, Olivia, I say, looking her straight in the eye. You care about Imagigan's money, and you know what? This is a pointless conversation. I've made my decision, and no amount of manipulation will change it. I see anger flash across Olivia's face, quickly replaced by cold calculation. She turns to Fletcher and whispers something in his ear. I can't make out the words, but I can see her lips moving quickly and her eyes never leaving me. Fletcher's expression changes. His cheeks flush, his eyes narrow. Whatever Olivia said to him, it hit a nerve. He looks at me with an expression I've never seen before, a mixture of anger, hurt, and something else, something dangerous. Mom, he says, his voice trembling with suppressed emotion. You always do this. You always think you know best, that we're not smart enough or responsible enough. But you know what? You're no better than us. Your precious project is just an attempt to prove that you still matter. A pathetic attempt. I recoil, stunned by the power of his words. Fletcher, I never said, you never said it, but you always thought it. His voice rises, attracting the attention of neighboring tables. You always thought I didn't live up to your expectations, that I wasn't worthy. Not worthy of what? I ask, completely confused. Fletcher, what are you talking about? The way you looked at your father, he says bitterly, with such admiration, and at me always with a hint of disappointment, as if I could never measure up to him. I'm stunned. Has he really thought all these years that I compare him to Edward? That I'm disappointed in him? Fletcher, that's not true, I say, trying to touch his hand, but he pulls it away. I've always been proud of you. You're lying, he hisses. Even now, you're lying. You're disappointed in me, in what I've become, in my family, in my children. You don't think I'm worthy of Imagigan's legacy. I never said that, I protest, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. Fletcher, please, let's talk about this calmly. Not here. Where? He laughs, but it's not a happy laugh. At your precious cultural center, or maybe at the grave of your father, whom you still love more than me? Fletcher, I'm shocked by his words. How can you say that? Olivia watches us with barely concealed satisfaction. The shepherds look embarrassed, but make no attempt to intervene. The children freeze with their phones in their hands, their eyes wide with shock. "I'm telling the truth," Fletcher continues, his voice now louder than usual. "You've always been a cold, controlling woman. You always knew better. You were always right. And now you want to spend money that should belong to our family on some meaningless project just to prove that you still matter, that you're still in control." I look at my son, and I hardly recognize him. Where did my kind, sensitive boy go? How did he turn into this angry, resentful man? "I love you, Fletcher," I say, quietly. "I always have and I always will. But I won't let you talk to me like that. And I won't let you or Olivia tell me how to spend my money." Olivia leans toward Fletcher again and whispers something in his ear. I see his face darken, his eyes narrowing to slits. Whatever she said, "It's like the last straw. You!" he begins, his voice trembling with rage. "You!" And then it happens faster than I can react. Fletcher rises from his seat, his hand shoots up, and I feel a sharp blow to my face. Pain burns my cheekbone, and stars flash before my eyes. I lose my balance and fall from my chair onto the hard floor of the restaurant. The world freezes for a moment. I lie on the floor, stunned by pain and shock. An instant silence descends. Around us, followed by an explosion of voices, someone is screaming. Someone is calling for the manager. I vaguely hear Eleanor's frightened cry. Slowly raising my head, I see Olivia's face. She doesn't look shocked. On the contrary, I see cold satisfaction in her eyes, quickly replaced by theatrical concern when she notices the glances of other patrons. Fletcher stands frozen, his hands still raised. His face reflects a mixture of emotions, shock, horror, and the realization of what he has just done. "Grandma." Elelena rushes toward me, her face contorted with fear. "Mom," Fletcher whispers, as if only now realizing what has happened. I didn't mean to. I don't know what came over me. I look at my son, the man to whom I gave everything. My youth, my dreams, my love. And in that moment, something inside me dies. The taxi stops outside my house. I sit motionless in the back seat, unable to force myself to move. The driver clears his throat. "We're here, ma'am." His voice snaps me out of my stupor. I mechanically take out my wallet, pay, and get out of the car. The keys slip out of my trembling fingers as I try to open the front door. Finally, I manage to get the lock to work and enter the dark hallway. Without turning on the lights, I walk into the living room and sink into an armchair. The silence of the house weighs on me, making what happened seem more unreal. Did my son, my Fletcher, really hit me? Was I really lying on the floor of an expensive restaurant? While people looked at me with pity and embarrassment, my hand reaches for my face. My cheekbone throbs with pain at the slightest touch. Tomorrow, there will be a bruise, maybe even a bump. How will I explain this to my neighbors, my acquaintances? What will I say if someone asks? Exhaustion washes over me, and I close my eyes. In the darkness, images float before my inner eye. Fletcher's face contorted with rage, Olivia's cold eyes, my grandchildren's frightened glances. And somewhere behind them, the ghostly smile of Edward, my husband, who would never raise a hand to me, who always treated me with love and respect. Edward. We met at a literary evening at the university. He was studying architecture. I was studying English literature. We were united by our love of Yeats' poetry. I remember how we argued about the meaning of the Second Coming while walking through the university park. He recited lines from memory, gesturing with such passion that he attracted the attention of passers-by. And I looked at him and knew that I was falling in love with this passionate, sincere man. Our wedding was modest, with only 20 guests in a small church on the outskirts of town. Edward insisted that we exchange vows that we had written ourselves. His words still ring in my ears. "Beatrice, you are my rock and my inspiration. I promise to respect your independence, support your aspirations, and love you in joy and in Sorrow until death do us part. We were happy even when money was tight, even when we had to work overtime to pay the bills. Every Sunday we had a culture day. We went to museums, exhibitions, theaters. Edward said that nourishing the soul was as important as nourishing the body. When Fletcher was born, our life changed, but it didn't become any less fulfilling. We took him everywhere with us, to art galleries, architectural exhibitions, parks, and libraries. Edward made wooden toys for him, and I read books to him, choosing different voices for the characters. Fletcher grew up to be an inquisitive, sensitive boy with a vivid imagination and a kind heart. And then, that fateful day came. Edward left for a conference in a neighboring town. The call from the hospital came like a bolt from the blue. A massive heart attack. The doctors did everything they could, but it was too late. Fletcher was 14. He stood next to me at the coffin, tall and thin, his face frozen. He didn't cry at the funeral, didn't show any grief. Only in the evening did I hear muffled sobs coming from his room. I wanted to go in and comfort him, but the door was locked. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened. He got ready for school, ate breakfast, and left without saying a word about his feelings. From that day on, something changed in our relationship. It was as if an invisible wall had grown between us. I tried to break through it. I offered to talk, invited him to our culture days, but Fletcher increasingly refused, preferring to spend time with his friends. I immersed myself in my work. I was promoted to head of the department, published several scientific articles, and began work on a monograph on the influence of Victorian literature on contemporary prose. All the while, I was saving money for Fletcher's education. I was determined to give him all the opportunities that Edward and I had planned for him. He got into a prestigious university, earned a degree in economics, and found a good job at a financial company. I was proud of him, although I noticed that with each passing year, he became less like the sensitive, curious boy Edward and I had raised. He became more practical, more focused on material success, and less interested in art and literature. And then he met Olivia. She was an assistant at the law firm that served his company, ambitious, confident, with impeccable taste and a cold beauty. When Fletcher brought her to meet me, I felt a strange uneasiness. There was something calculating in her smile, in her gaze. But Fletcher looked at her with such adoration that I suppressed my doubts. Their wedding was lavish, over 200 guests, an expensive restaurant, an exquisite menu. I felt out of place in this atmosphere of ostentatious luxury. As the newlyweds exchanged their standard vows, I couldn't help but remember the sincere, heartfelt words Edward and I had exchanged. After the wedding, Fletcher became even more distant. Our meetings turned into formal dinners on holidays where Olivia dominated the conversation, and Fletcher silently agreed with her every word. I saw how she gradually isolated him from his former friends, his hobbies, everything that didn't fit into her idea of a successful life. When our grandchildren were born, first Theodore, then Eleanor, I hoped it would bring us closer together. I offered to help with the children, wanted to spend time with them, to pass on to them what I had once passed on to Fletcher. But Olivia always found reasons to limit our contact. The children have activities, they need to study for tests. We have other plans. I set up a trust fund to pay for their education. It was the only thing I could do to secure their future. Olivia accepted it with cold gratitude, as if it were her due. And Fletcher didn't even try to object as she gradually pushed me out of their family life. And now this, a slap in the face, a physical manifestation of the emotional abuse I've endured for years, silently accepting it to maintain the illusion of a family. The doorbell snaps me out of my bitter memories. I don't move, hoping the uninvited guest will go away, but the bell rings again insistently and demandingly. "Beatrice, I know you're home. Please open the door." I recognize the voice instantly. Tabitha Crawford, my colleague from the department, and perhaps the only person I can call a true friend. We met 30 years ago when she came to work at the college, and we've stayed in touch ever since. Even after I retired, I struggled to get up from my chair. feeling every muscle ache. I walk slowly to the door, trying to think of an explanation for the bruise on my face. But when I open the door and see Tabitha's worried face, all my excuses fly out of my head. "My God, Beatrice," she gasps, looking at my cheek. "What happened?" "It's nothing." I try to brush it off. "I just fell." "Don't lie to me," she says firmly, walking into the house without waiting to be invited. "I've known you for 30 years. That doesn't look like a fall." She turns on the light in the living room, and I flinch at the sudden brightness. Tabitha stares intently at my cheek, her face hardening. "Who did this?" she asks bluntly. "And don't say no one. This is clearly a bruise." I sink into a chair, suddenly feeling that I can no longer keep it all inside. "Fletcher," I say quietly, "my son hit me today during dinner at a restaurant." Tabitha freezes, her eyes widening in shock. "Fletcher, but why? What happened?" And then I tell her everything about Imagigen's inheritance, about the plans for the cultural center, about Olivia's manipulation, about how she whispered something in Fletcher's ear before he lost control. Tabitha listens silently, only shaking, her head occasionally. When I finish, she gets up and goes to the kitchen. I hear her open the refrigerator, looking for something. "You don't have any ice," she says, returning. "I'll make a cold compress with frozen vegetables. It'll reduce the swelling." She wraps a bag of frozen peas in a towel and presses it against my cheek. The cold touch is both painful and pleasant. "Hold it there for 15 minutes, she instructs. "In the meantime, let's talk about what you're going to do next." Do I ask? "What do you mean?" "I mean, your son committed an assault, Beatrice," she says bluntly. "That's a crime. You could press charges." I shake my head. "No, Tabitha, I'm not going to do that." "Why not?" "Because he's your son. That's no excuse for violence." "I know," I sigh. "It's just the trial, the publicity, all of it. I don't want to go through that, and I don't want to put Theo and Ellie through it." Tabitha looks at me for a long time, then nods. "I understand. But you have to do something. You can't just pretend nothing happened." "I'm not going to," I say, and there is a determination in my voice that surprises even me. "I'm cutting ties with Fletcher and Olivia completely." "Are you serious?" Tabitha looks surprised. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I've turned a blind eye to their manipulation and neglect for too long. For years, I've made excuses for Fletcher's behavior, convincing myself that he's just under his wife's influence. But today, he made a choice. He chose to hit his mother, and there must be consequences for that choice." Tabitha nods slowly, a look of respect appearing on her face. "I'm glad to hear that, Beatrice. It's about time." "It won't be easy," I admit. "They're my only family." "No," Tabitha says firmly. "Family isn't just blood. Family is people who love and respect you, who support you, not humiliate you, who rejoice in your successes, not try to control your decisions." Her words sink deep into my consciousness. How many years have I clung to the illusion of family ties, ignoring the fact that I haven't had a real family for a long time? Ever since Olivia came into Fletcher's life, she has methodically destroyed our relationship, turning my son into her puppet and me into an inconvenient obstacle to her complete control. "You're right," I say, lowering the compress. "But my grandchildren—" "You can try to maintain a relationship with them directly," Tabitha suggests. "They're old enough to understand what's going on, especially after today." I remember Eleanor's face when she ran out of the restaurant after me. Shock, anxiety, confusion, and something else I couldn't identify at the time. Perhaps understanding, the realization that something deeply wrong was happening. Perhaps, I agree, but Olivia will do everything she can to prevent that. "You underestimate yourself, Beatrice," Tabitha says with a gentle smile. "You've always been a strong woman. Remember how you fought to get female authors included in the literature program? How you defended your dissertation in front of a committee of old conservatives. How you managed to raise your son on your own while building an academic career. I smile faintly, remembering those times. Yes, I was strong once upon a time. That strength is still in you, Tabitha continues as if reading my mind. You just let Olivia and Fletcher convince you that you're weak, dependent, in need of their guidance and control. You're probably right, I sigh. I was so afraid of losing my connection with my son that I was willing to put up with anything. But today something broke, something irreparable. And that's for the best, Tabitha says firmly. Sometimes you have to destroy something in order to rebuild it, something healthier, more honest. She gets up and goes to the kitchen. I hear the kettle boiling. A few minutes later, she returns with 2 cups of fragrant tea. Here, she says, handing me one. Chamomile with honey. It'll help you calm down. I take the cup, feeling the warmth penetrate the porcelain and into my cold fingers. Thank you, Tabitha, for everything, for coming, for listening. Don't thank me, she waves me off. That's what friends are for. By the way, how did you know I was home? Did something happen? Tabitha takes a sip of tea and looks at me over the rim of the cup. Veronica Shepherd called me. We're in the same book club. She was very upset about what happened. She said Fletcher hit you and you left the restaurant alone. I decided to check if you were okay. Oh, Veronica, I nod. She looks shocked like everyone else there except Olivia. What do you mean? Olivia didn't look surprised or upset, more like satisfied, as if everything was going according to her plan. Tabitha frowns. Do you think she provoked Fletcher on purpose? I'm sure she did, I say firmly. She whispered something in his ear right before he lost it, something that made him furious. But what could have caused that reaction? What could she have said? I shake my head. I don't know. Something very personal, very painful. Maybe something to do with Edward. Fletcher was yelling something about me loving my father more than him, that I always looked at him with disappointment, comparing him to Edward. That's not true. Tabitha objects. You always spoke of Fletcher with such pride, such love. I know, I sigh. But apparently, he felt differently. Or maybe Olivia convinced him of that during their years of marriage. We sit in silence, sipping our tea. It's completely dark outside, with only the streetlights casting a dim light on the deserted street. What are you going to do about the cultural center? Tabitha asks after a long pause. I'll continue working on the project, I reply without hesitation. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with a real estate agent to sign a preliminary contract for the house. Then I'll need to find an architect for the restoration project, an interior designer. Sounds wonderful. Tabitha smiles. I've always said that Shoreline needs a good cultural space. Have you decided which of Imogen's works will be exhibited? Most of her later works are from the Sea Transformation series. They are abstract paintings inspired by the ocean. They are very expressive with deep symbolic undertones. They'll look great in a house on the coast. Tabitha nods. What about the literary program? We dive into discussing the details of the project, and I feel the enthusiasm that was dampened by the conflict with my son gradually returning. Talking about the cultural center, its potential, and what it can bring to the community. I feel like I'm getting a new lease on life. When Tabitha finally gets ready to leave, it's almost midnight. She insists that I keep applying the cold compress to my cheek and promises to stop by tomorrow. You'll be fine, Beatrice, she says, hugging me goodbye. You're stronger than you think, and you deserve respect from your son, from your daughter-in-law, from everyone. True love doesn't require enduring humiliation and abuse, even if it comes from your own children. After she leaves, I stand at the window for a long time, looking out at Shoreline at night. The city lights reflect off the dark waters of the bay, creating the illusion of a starry sky underwater. Edward loved this view. He said that at moments like this, He felt connected to the whole world, to the past and the future at the same time. What would you do, Edward? I ask myself. What would you do in my place? I can almost hear his voice, calm and confident. You know the answer, Beatrice. You always have. And it's true. Deep down, I know what I have to do. Break off the toxic relationships that have poisoned my life for years. Focus on a project that will benefit society and be a worthy memorial to Imogen. Try to establish direct contact with my grandchildren if they want me to, and start a new chapter in my life without manipulation, without humiliation, without fear of losing what has long been lost. My cheek still hurts, reminding me of what happened, but strangely this physical pain brings clarity. It's as if Fletcher's blow broke not only my cheekbone, but also the illusions I had cherished for so long. Illusions about family, about my son, about my own role in their lives. I return to my bedroom and slowly get ready for bed. Tomorrow will be a new day, a day when I will start living a new life with new goals, with a new understanding of myself and my relationships. And for the first time in a long time, I feel not fear of the future, but a strange, unexpected relief. It's as if a heavy burden that I've been carrying for years has finally fallen from my shoulders, allowing me to straighten up and breathe deeply. The morning sun lights up my kitchen as I make myself some tea. A week has passed since that awful evening at the restaurant. The bruise on my cheek has turned yellowish, but it's still visible. I've stopped hiding it under layers of foundation. Let people see it. Let them ask questions. I'm not going to keep secrets anymore, just to keep up appearances. The phone rings for the third time this morning. I know who it is. Fletcher has been trying to call me since I didn't show up for family dinner on Sunday. I don't answer. I'm not ready to hear his voice, his excuses. Maybe I'll never be ready. Instead, I review the documents I prepared for today's meeting with Mr. Harrington, my longtime attorney. He's a dry, elderly man with an impeccable reputation and a sharp mind. He's been handling my legal affairs since college, helped set up a trust fund for my grandchildren, and will now be changing my will. The doorbell interrupts my thoughts. Standing on the doorstep is a courier with a bouquet of white lilies, my favorite flowers. I know who they're from before I even open the attached card. Mom, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Please, let's talk. Fletcher, I placed the bouquet on the table in the hall. White lilies were Edward's favorite flowers. He gave them to me on every wedding anniversary. Fletcher knows that. Knows they have a special meaning for me. It's easy to manipulate feelings using symbols like that, but I'm not falling for these tricks anymore. My car keys are already in my hand. My briefcase is on my shoulder. Today is an important day, and no sentimental gestures are going to make me stray from my chosen path. Mr. Harrington's office is located in an old building in the center of Shoreline. The secretary, who has known me for many years, smiles warmly and immediately shows me into the office. Mrs. Pellegrini, Mr. Harrington rises to greet me. I'm glad to see you, although the circumstances are not the most pleasant. I briefly explained the situation over the phone when I made the appointment, but now sitting in his office, I tell him everything in detail about Imogen's inheritance, the conflict with my son and daughter-in-law, and the physical abuse. This is a serious matter, Mr. Harrington says when I finish. You could file an assault report. No, I shake my head. I don't want a court case. I just want to change the will and make sure Imogen's inheritance is used as I intend. He nods understandingly. In that case, we'll need to draw up a new document. The current version, if I remember correctly, leaves everything to your son, with the condition that a trust fund be set up for your grandchildren. Yes, I confirm. Now, I want the cultural center I'm creating to be the primary beneficiary. The house, the art collection, the library, everything should go to a foundation that will manage the center. Mr. Harrington makes notes in his notebook. What about personal belongings, savings? I pause for a moment. Personal belongings that are not related to the center can be distributed among the grandchildren when they reach the age of majority. As for savings, I pause again. Half should go to the foundation to support the center's activities, a quarter to additional scholarships for my grandchildren if they wish to continue their education after college, and a quarter to Tabitha Crawford, my close friend. No direct inheritance rights for your son? None, I reply firmly. Fletcher has already received enough from me in education and support opportunities. Now he has to fend for himself. Mr. Harrington looks at me intently over his glasses. You do realize that he can contest the will? As the sole direct heir, he has the right to do so. I know, I nod, but he won't have any grounds. I'm of sound mind and capable of making informed decisions. Besides, there are witnesses to what happened at the restaurant. If it goes to court, it won't be in his favor. True, Mr. Harrington. Agrees. I'll have the documents ready by the end of the week. You will need to sign them in the presence of 2 witnesses who are not beneficiaries. I'll ask Tabitha and one of my former colleagues, I say. He adds, you should consider a healthcare proxy in case you are unable to express your wishes yourself due to your health. It's a sensible suggestion, but it makes me think about age, about the inevitability of growing old. I would have named Fletcher, but now Tabitha, I say firmly. She knows me better than anyone, and I trust her judgment. Mr. Harrington nods and makes a note. What about buying a house? You mentioned you wanted to speed up the process. Yes, I confirm. Mr. Dawson, the real estate agent, said the owner is willing to move quickly if we don't haggle over the price. I can contact him and expedite the paperwork, Mr. Harrington offers. I also recommend a thorough technical inspection of the building given its age and condition. I've already arranged it, I smile. The experts will inspect the house on Monday. Excellent, Mr. Harrington smiles back. It's nice to see you taking such a thorough approach. When I leave his office 2 hours later, I feel lighter. The concrete steps and legal formalities give my decision weight and finality, which I strangely find comforting. In the car, I check my phone. 5 missed calls from Fletcher, 2 messages from Olivia, and 1 from Eleanor. I open only the last one. Grandma, are you okay? I'm worried. Please text me. Her concern touches me. I quickly type a reply. I'm fine, sweetie. Busy with some things. Talk to you soon. I don't read Olivia's messages, knowing they will be a mixture of fake concern and veiled threats. Instead, I drive to the next stop on my itinerary for today, the bank. I open a new account separate from the ones I already have. I transfer Imagin's inheritance and some of my own savings into it. The bank manager, a young woman with a professional smile, doesn't ask any unnecessary questions, although I notice her gaze lingering on my still visible cheekbone. Leaving. The bank, I feel hungry and decide to have lunch at a small cafe on the waterfront. Edward and I used to come here often. We would sit at a corner table, discuss books, and watch people passing by. After his death, I avoided this place. The memories were too painful. But today, something draws me here. I order a salad and tea, enjoying the view of the bay. It's a clear, sunny day, and boats glide across the water, leaving white trails on the blue surface. The beauty of this landscape reminds me why I love the shoreline so much, and why I want to leave something meaningful here. Lost in my thoughts, I don't immediately notice someone approaching my table. I look up and see Olivia, impeccably dressed, with perfect hair and a cold smile. "Beatrice," she says, sitting down across from me without waiting to be invited. "I finally found you." "Olivia," I say, unable to hide my surprise. "How did you know I was here?" "Shoreline is a small town," she shrugs. "Veronica Shepherd called me and said she saw you coming into this cafe." I make a mental note to be more careful about appearing in public. The town really is small, and rumors spread quickly. "What do you want?" I ask bluntly. "To talk," she replies, still wearing that fake smile. Fletcher is beside himself with worry. You didn't answer your calls. You didn't come to Sunday dinner. I think the reasons are obvious, I say, instinctively touching my cheekbone. Olivia pretends she's only now noticing the bruise. Oh, that's terrible. Fletcher has never done that before. He's not that kind of person, Beatrice. Something just broke inside him in that moment. He's genuinely remorseful. So genuinely that he sent you instead of coming himself? I ask sarcastically. He's afraid you won't want to see him, Olivia explains. And to be honest, I was worried about that too. But the situation has to be resolved somehow, for the sake of the children, if not for us. The situation has already been resolved, Olivia, I say calmly. I'm breaking up with you and Fletcher completely. Her eyes widen slightly. She clearly didn't expect this, but that's impossible. We're a family. No, I shake my head. Family is people who love and respect each other. For years, you manipulated my son, turned him against me, tried to control my decisions and my money, and now he's raised his hand to me. This isn't a family. It's a toxic relationship that I no longer intend to support. Olivia changes tactics, her face becoming concerned. Beatrice, I understand you're upset and you have every right to be. But such radical decisions. This is an emotional reaction that could lead to consequences you'll regret later. I've thought this through carefully, I reply, and I've already taken concrete steps. The will has been rewritten. Fletcher has been disinherited. Imagigans. Money has been transferred to a separate account that he has no access to. The deal to buy the house will be finalized in the next few days. I see her expression change from feigned concern to poorly concealed anger. You can't do this, she says, her voice hardening. Fletcher is your only child, your legal heir. He can contest the will. Let him try, I shrug. He has little chance of winning given the circumstances, and a public trial where the fact of his violence comes to light is unlikely to reflect well on his career or on your reputation in society. Olivia presses her lips into a thin line. You don't understand what you're doing. This decision will hurt not only us, but also the children. The children have nothing to do with our conflict, I say firmly. I have already provided for their education through a trust fund, and the new will provides additional funds for them. But they will receive this money directly without your control. You have no right to interfere in how we raise our children, Olivia hisses, forgetting her role as a caring sister-in-law. I'm not interfering, I reply calmly. I'm just securing their future, and I'm leaving the door open for them to communicate with you if they want to when they grow up and can make their own decisions. Olivia looks at me with undisguised hatred. You'll regret this, Beatrice. Perhaps, I agree, but not as much as I would have regretted continuing to endure humiliation and abuse for the sake of an illusion of family. She stands up abruptly. But before she leaves, she leans toward me and says quietly, almost in a whisper, Do you know what I told Fletcher that night? That you always thought he was unworthy of the Pellegrini name? That you told me how disappointed you were in him? How you wished he had followed in his father's footsteps? That Imagigan's money is your way of creating a legacy worthy of Edward's name, not Fletcher's. I recoil, shocked. That's a lie. I never said that. What does it matter? Olivia smiles coldly. He believed it, and he will always believe that. His mother thought he was unworthy. With that, she leaves, leaving me reeling from her cruelty and manipulation. Now I know that ending the relationship is the only right decision. These people will never change, never stop trying to control and manipulate. I return home determined to finish what I started. I write letters to my grandchildren by hand. In this age of electronic communication, it seems more personal, more meaningful. My letter to Theodore is restrained, but sincere. I explain my decisions, express my hope that someday we will be able to restore our relationship, and tell him that I will always love him no matter what. The letter to Eleanor is more emotional. I feel that she is more like me, sensitive, thoughtful, with a deep inner world that she is forced to hide under her mother's influence. I write about music, literature, and how important it is to follow your heart, even if it doesn't meet the expectations of others. I explain to both of them that my decision to break off relations with their parents has nothing to do with my feelings for them, that the door to my home will always be open to them when they are ready. I hope to one day show them the cultural center, tell them about Imagigen's work, and share with them a part of my life that their parents always tried to hide. After sealing the envelopes, I put them on the shelf. I'll send them later when things have calmed down a bit. Right now, it would only make things worse and provoke another wave of anger from Olivia. In the evening, Fletcher calls. I stare at the phone screen for a long time, fighting the urge to answer, to hear his voice, maybe even believe his remorse. But I remember Olivia's words, her admission of the lies she whispered in his ear, and decide that talking is pointless. While Fletcher is under his wife's influence, no reconciliation is possible. Instead, I dial Tabitha's number and tell her about my meeting with Olivia. "What a snake!" Tabitha exclaims, using Fletcher's deepest fears and insecurities against him and against you. That's just mean, but effective. I sigh. She knew exactly what to say to push him over the edge. "What now?" Tabitha asks. "Now I'm moving on," I reply resolutely. I'm finalizing the deal on the house, starting the renovations, and getting ready to open the cultural center. I'm living my life without looking back for their approval or disapproval. "Sounds like a great plan," Tabitha says approvingly. "And you know what? I'm proud of you, Beatrice. Not everyone can find the strength to break out of a toxic relationship, especially a family one." It wasn't easy, I admit, and it's still not easy. Part of me still hopes that Fletcher will come to his senses, that he'll remember what he was like before Olivia. "He's a grown man," Tabitha reminds me gently, "and he's responsible for his actions regardless of his wife's influence. He made a choice when he raised his hand to you, and he has to live with the consequences of that choice." I know she's right, but a mother's heart doesn't accept rational arguments so easily. Part of me will always love Fletcher, will always remember the little boy with bright eyes and an open heart. But I have to accept that that boy grew up a long time ago and turned into a man I hardly recognize. The next few days pass in a flurry of business. I sign the papers to buy the house, meet with the architect, who will be doing the restoration, and discuss the interior design concept with the designer. Every decision, every step forward gives me confidence and confirms that I'm on the right path. Fletcher continues to call, but less and less frequently. One day, I notice his car parked across from my house, but I don't go out. Let him think I'm not home. I'm not ready for this meeting, and I'm not sure I'll ever be ready. Instead, I immerse myself completely in the Cultural Center project. I sort through Imagigen's work, study the history of the Victorian house that will soon be mine, and plan literary and educational programs. It takes up all my time and energy, leaving no room for bitter thoughts and regrets. And strangely, the more I invest myself in this project, the less I define myself through my role as Fletcher's mother or Theo and Ellie's grandmother. It's as if every day I rediscover Beatrice Pellegrini, not just a mother, grandmother, or widow, but a woman with her own aspirations, dreams, and goals. A woman who can create something meaningful not only for her family, but for an entire community. One evening, while looking through old photo albums, I find a picture taken a year before Edward's death. We are standing on the beach, the wind ruffling our hair, the sun blinding us, making us squint, but we are smiling openly, sincerely, happily. I look at my face in this photo and suddenly realize that for the first time in a long time, I feel echoes of that happiness, that inner freedom. Not because I've gone back to the past or I'm trying to recreate what was lost, but because I'm finally moving forward toward the future I've chosen for myself. 2 weeks after the incident at the restaurant, I receive an official letter from Fletcher's lawyer. In dry legal terms, he threatens to challenge my decisions, demands a meeting to discuss a mutually acceptable solution, and hints at the possibility of having my mental state examined. The latter is particularly offensive, a tactic typically used against elderly people whose decisions are not to the liking of their relatives. I pass the letter to Mr. Harrington, who responds in equally formal terms but with an unambiguous hint that in the event of legal proceedings, evidence of physical abuse by Fletcher will be provided, including witness statements and a medical report on my injury. A reply arrives 3 days later. The tone is much softer, and the threats of legal action have disappeared. Instead, there is an offer to meet for family reconciliation. I decline, knowing that this is just another attempt at manipulation. On the same day, a huge bouquet of roses and a box of chocolates arrive with a card from Fletcher and Olivia. With deepest apologies and hope for reconciliation, I give the flowers to my neighbor and the chocolates to the children playing in the street. No gifts can change my mind. On Sunday, the doorbell rings. Fletcher is standing on the doorstep, pale, haggard, with dark circles under his eyes. I almost slam the door shut, but something in his eyes, sincere remorse and pain, makes me stop. "Mom," he says quietly, "please just listen to me, just 5 minutes." I let him in, but don't invite him to sit down. We stand in the hallway looking at each other like strangers. "I came to apologize," he begins. "What I did was unforgivable. I understand why you don't want to see me, why you changed your will. I deserved it. Yes, you did. I agree. But it wasn't just that punch. It was the culmination of years of neglect, manipulation, attempts to control my life, years when you allowed Olivia to humiliate me, isolate me from my grandchildren, treat me like a burden rather than a mother." Fletcher lowers his eyes. "I know, and I have no excuse. But I want you to know that I realize my mistakes. I've started seeing a therapist to work through my anger issues and control problems. I'm trying to change." "I'm glad to hear that," I say sincerely. "I hope it helps you be a better father to Theo and Ellie, and a better son to you," he asks, hopefully. I look at him for a long time. Part of me wants to believe that he has really changed, that our relationship can be repaired. But another part remembers the cold satisfaction in Olivia's eyes, her admission of the lies she whispered in his ear. "Time will tell," I say finally. "Right now, I'm not ready to resume our relationship." Sunlight streaming through the tall, stained glass windows creates colorful patterns on the wooden floor. I stand in the middle of the main gallery of the Maya Cultural Center and can't help but smile. It's hard to believe that a year and a half has passed since that terrible evening that became a turning point in my life. The Victorian mansion on Makova Street, once abandoned and dilapidated, has now been transformed beyond recognition. The restored facade with its turrets and carved elements is once again a delight to behold. Inside, the high ceilings with stucco moldings have been restored. The wooden wall panels have been polished to a shine, and the antique fireplaces are, once again, functional. At the same time, the building is equipped with modern lighting, climate control, and security systems, a perfect combination of historical charm and modern comfort. The ground floor houses a gallery displaying Imagigan's works, mainly from her later series, Sea Transformations. The abstract paintings inspired by the ocean, with their deep blue and green tones, blend perfectly with the maritime theme of the shoreline. The second floor houses a library and a space for literary gatherings, while the third floor features a small lecture hall and several classrooms for educational programs. The center opened 3 months ago, and every day since then has brought new joys and challenges. Local residents are showing genuine interest in the exhibition. Literary evenings are drawing full houses, and there is already a waiting list for educational programs for children and teenagers. I have hired a small staff, a gallery director, an administrator, 2 attendants, and teachers for the educational programs. But I do most of the organizational work myself, which I find deeply satisfying. For the first time in many years, I feel that I am doing something truly meaningful, not only for myself, but also for the community. Beatrice, the high school tour will be here in 15 minutes. Margaret, our administrator, peeks into the gallery. Are you ready? Yes, of course, I smile, adjusting the collar of my blouse. Giving tours to school children has become one of my favorite duties. Seeing the eyes of teenagers light up as they discover new horizons in art and literature brings me special joy. Margaret is one of many new acquaintances who have grown into friends over the past year. A retired librarian, she brings her vast experience and love of books to the center. There are others too. Leonard, a local artist who helps with exhibitions. Diana, a former music teacher who organizes musical evenings. Robert, an enthusiastic historian who gives lectures on the history of Shoreline. This new circle of friends is another unexpected blessing that the changes in my life have brought. These are people who share my interests and values, who respect me, not for my family connections, but for who I am and what I do. Of course, Tabitha remains my closest friend. She has supported me every step of the way, from the painful breakup with my son to the triumphant opening of the center. She now heads the literary department, organizing meetings with writers, poetry evenings, and discussion clubs. After a tour for school children, I have a meeting with a potential sponsor, a local businessman interested in supporting our educational program. Then lunch with members of the City Council to discuss the possibility of including the center in the Shoreline tourist routes. The day promises to be busy, but I feel energized rather than tired. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been. Like if Fletcher hadn't hit me. If I had continued to endure humiliation and manipulation for the sake of maintaining the appearance of a family relationship, I probably would never have found the strength to break out of that toxic relationship. I would never have built the lighthouse. I would never have discovered this new life full of meaning and satisfaction. Of course, there were difficult moments. In the first few months after breaking up with Fletcher, I often woke up in the middle of the night feeling empty and lost. The habit of being a mother, a grandmother, the center of the family doesn't disappear overnight. There were days when I almost gave in to the urge to call, apologize, and try to fix things. But every time the temptation became particularly strong, I remembered the cold satisfaction in Olivia's eyes, the lies she whispered to Fletcher, his raised hand, and I realized that returning to the old relationship would mean returning to the old humiliation and manipulation. Instead, I focused on building a new life. Every restored element of the Victorian house, every picture hung on the wall, and every literary meeting I attended became a brick in the foundation of this new reality. I hadn't heard from Fletcher and Olivia in over a year. After several failed attempts at reconciliation, and I suspect after consulting with lawyers about the futility of contesting my will, they left me alone. I only learn about what is going on in their lives from mutual acquaintances, and even then only in bits and pieces. The situation with my grandchildren is more complicated. Theodore, who is now 17, has never contacted me. According to Veronica Shepherd, whose son attends the same school, he is completely immersed in preparing for admission to a prestigious university following an ambitious plan that Olivia must have drawn up for him. Eleanor, on the other hand, sent me a letter 6 months after our breakup. It was short and uncertain, asking about my health and how the Cultural Center project was progressing. I replied with a detailed account of the restoration, attached photos, and invited her to visit when she had the opportunity. Since then, we have exchanged several more letters. She writes about school, music, and sometimes about the book she is reading. She never mentions her parents or her home situation. I respect these boundaries and don't ask questions. The school trip is going wonderfully. The teenagers who were initially skeptical about boring art are gradually becoming fascinated by the story of Imagine's unconventional path in the world of painting and her experiments with techniques and materials. They are particularly impressed By the Underwater Dream series, paintings created using sand, shells, and other marine elements. After the tour, I see the group off and return to my office located in the former greenhouse of the mansion. It is a bright room with panoramic windows overlooking a small garden that we have restored based on historical photographs. This is where I usually work with documents, hold meetings, or sometimes just sit with a cup of tea watching the seasons change in the garden. Today, there is a stack of applications on my desk from local artists who want to exhibit their work in our gallery. We have decided that in addition to the permanent exhibition of Imogen's work, we will organize temporary exhibitions of contemporary artists, mainly local ones. This attracts a new audience and helps emerging artists gain recognition. I'm looking through the portfolios, making notes when there's a knock at the door. "Come in," I say without looking up from my papers. "Grandma." The voice makes me jump. I look up and see Eleanor standing in the doorway. She has changed noticeably in the past year and a half. She has grown taller, transforming from a child into a teenager. Her hair is shorter than I remember, and there is a new mature seriousness in her eyes. "Ellie." I stand up, unable to hide my surprise and joy. "What a nice surprise." She smiles uncertainly, shifting from foot to foot. "I wanted to see your center. It's impressive." "Thank you," I say, coming closer but not daring to hug her. "I'm so glad you came. Would you like some tea or maybe a tour?" "A tour, please?" She nods. "I've already looked around the gallery downstairs a little, but I'd like to see everything." I show her around the building, telling her about the restoration process, the concept behind each space, and the programs we run. Eleanor listens attentively, asks thoughtful questions, and I notice genuine admiration in her eyes. "This is incredible, Grandma," she says as we finish our tour on the roof, which offers a stunning view of the bay. "You did all this yourself?" "I had a great team," I smile. "Architects, restorers, designers, but yes, it was my project from start to finish." Mom said, she stumbles, clearly embarrassed. "Never mind." "What did your mom say?" I ask gently. Eleanor looks away toward the horizon where the sky meets the sea. That it was just a whim. That the center would close in 6 months because no one in Shoreline needed a place like this. I'm not surprised. It's typical of Olivia to belittle the importance of what others do, especially if it's successful. "Well, it looks like she was wrong," I say without malice. "We've been open for 3 months now, and the number of visitors is growing." "I know," Eleanor nods. "My friend Zoe came here with her class on a field trip. She said it was the best place in town and that you're amazing at talking about art." This praise passed on through a third party touches me more than any formal compliment. "Thanks for telling me that," I smile. "Want to go back inside? It's getting chilly out here." We go down to my office where Margaret has already made tea and cookies. Eleanor sits down in the armchair by the window, wrapping both hands around her cup as if trying to warm herself. "Do your parents know you're here?" I ask after a pause. She shakes her head. "I told them I was going to Zoe's to study for a history test." "I see," I nod, not judging her for the lie. "You're taking a risk coming here." "If they find out, I don't care," she says suddenly with unexpected firmness. "I'm tired of it all, of their constant fighting, of my mom controlling my every move, of your name being banned in our house as if you've committed some kind of crime." I listen silently, giving her a chance to get it off her chest. "Ever since. You stopped talking to each other. Everything has gotten worse," she continues. "My parents are always arguing. Dad is often away from home, saying he has a lot of work to do. Mom snaps at me for any reason, especially at me. Theo is always in his room preparing for college as if that's the only thing that matters." "I'm so sorry, Ellie," I say sincerely. "That must be hard for you. It's not just the arguments." She looks at me straight in the eye, her eyes filled with a mixture of pain and determination. "Mom, she started treating me the same way she treated you. She criticizes everything I do, makes fun of my interests, constantly compares me to others. Nothing is ever good enough. This admission hits me right in the heart. I was afraid something like this might be happening, but hearing it confirmed by Eleanor herself is something else entirely. Like what? I ask cautiously. I won second place in a music competition last month, she says. I played Chopin. Everyone said it was beautiful, but my mom just said, well, I guess first place was too high a bar for you. I nod, understanding all too well this type of cruelty disguised as constructive criticism. And when I said I wanted to go to music, school instead of law school, she made such a fuss. Eleanor sighs. She said music was a hobby, not a career, that I'd be playing in subway stations for change if I didn't come to my senses. What did your father say? I ask. Nothing, she says with a bitter smile. He never argues with Mom. He just sits there looking like he's not even there. It's so like Fletcher, the way he's become over the years of his marriage to Olivia. A shadow of his former self, a man without opinions or will of his own. I hate it, Eleanor says suddenly, anger breaking through her voice. I hate how she manipulates everyone, how she makes us feel small and insignificant, how she forced Dad to give you up. Ellie, I say gently, your father made his choice. I don't want you to think of him as a victim. He's a grown man responsible for his own actions. She looks at me for a long time, then nods. You're right. It's just, sometimes I see something in his eyes, longing, regret, especially when Mom starts criticizing me for being too much like Grandma, reading too much, being too into art and music. Being like me isn't the worst thing in the world, I smile. At least I hope not. That's the best compliment I've ever received, Eleanor says unexpectedly, and her smile reminds me of the little girl I once knew. We talk for another hour about music, books, and her plans for the future. She really wants to go to conservatory and dreams of becoming a professional pianist. She already has a repertoire, is studying with a good teacher, paid for by the trust, fund I set up, and is preparing for auditions. Grandma, she says before leaving, can I come here sometimes, just to hang out, maybe help with something? Of course, sweetie, I reply without hesitation. You're always welcome here. And if you want, you can practice the piano in our music room. It's not as nice as yours at home, but it's beautiful. She interrupts. I saw it when you showed me the third floor, and here I can play what I want, not just what Mom approves of. We agree that she will come on Tuesdays and Thursdays after school, supposedly for extra lessons in the library. It's not an ideal solution. I don't like secrets and lies, but I understand that in this situation, Eleanor has no other choice. What if they find out? She asks, standing at the door. What if my mom forbids me to see you? Then we'll find another way, I reply confidently. You're 13 now. In a few years, you'll be able to make your own decisions, regardless of what your parents think. Until then, I'll be here waiting for you, supporting your dreams. She hugs me impulsively. For the first time in a long time, I feel something warm blossom in my heart. Not reconciliation with the past, no, but the possibility of a new future, a new connection based not on obligations or expectations, but on mutual respect and love. After Eleanor leaves, I stand at the window for a long time, looking out at the bay. The sun is sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky and water in shades of gold and purple. The very hour that Edward loved to paint in his architectural sketches. The magic hour, as he called it, when everything is transformed, bathed in a special light. I think about Fletcher, about how he might really regret his choice, about how our relationship turned out. I think about Olivia, about the inner emptiness a person must have to find satisfaction in humiliating others. I think about Theodore, following the path his parents chose for him, unaware that other possibilities exist. But most of all, I think about Eleanor, about her courage, her determination to follow her dream despite the pressure, about how she found the strength to come here today, risking her mother's wrath, and I realize that I don't regret anything. Yes, the break with my son was painful, and that pain will never completely go away. But it was a necessary step, not only for my own well-being, but also to show Eleanor that it is possible to break free from toxic relationships, to start a new life, to be happy despite past traumas and losses. Sometimes the wisest choice is to let go of those who hurt you, even if they are family. Not out of revenge or resentment, but out of the understanding that some relationships cannot be healed. Some patterns of behavior cannot be changed from the outside. And that true strength lies not in enduring humiliation for the sake of maintaining the status quo, but in the ability to start over, to build something meaningful from the wreckage of shattered expectations. I turn away from the window and notice a folder on the table with documents I was looking through before Eleanor arrived. Applications from artists who want to exhibit their work in our gallery. Among them are several really talented ones whose work would look great in our halls. Tomorrow I have a meeting with the City Council about expanding educational programs, followed by a discussion of the Summer Arts Festival with Leonard and Diana. Life goes on, filled with new projects, new acquaintances, new opportunities. And in this new life, there is now a place for Eleanor. Not as a granddaughter I see on holidays under Olivia's watchful eye, but as a close person with whom we are forming our own independent relationship, a relationship based on mutual respect, shared interests, and sincere affection. Maybe someday, something similar will happen with Theodore. Maybe even with Fletcher, if he finds the strength to break free from Olivia's influence, realize his mistakes, and become an independent person, not just a reflection of his wife's desires and ambitions. But even if that doesn't happen, I know that my life is full and meaningful. That the decision I made a year and a half ago was the right one despite all the pain it caused. That sometimes you have to lose your blood family to find your family of spirit. And that ultimately it is these connections based on choice, not obligation, that bring true satisfaction and happiness.